Hello and welcome once again to this new course on AWS fundamentals. We'll be covering today elastic load balancing, auto scaling groups, EBS volumes, how many types of uh, load balancers are there. We'll be covering elastic cloud balancing in terms of the classical, the orthodox style, the application load balancers, and the network load balancers. So let's just get started. Give me one moment. Before going ahead, let's first discuss, what is scalability. So scalability, there are different kinds of scalability. So as you can go through the slide, there are vertical scalability, which means increase of size of an instance. And the other type of scalability is horizontal scalability. So for example, if you are running a T2 micro instance and you need to just go ahead and scale up. So what you're gonna do is you are uh, increasing the capacity of the hardware to go ahead and take more load, more stress onto the servers. In simple, uh, if you are running on 2 GB RAM, you want to outscale it to 16 GB RAM. So when your footfall of your server was somewhere around 15 people, now even if like 100 people come and ask for any particular service, you will be able to go ahead and render them. So this is how you go ahead and vertically scale. So vertical scale is a common, sorry, RDS, Elastic Cache are the services which scale vertically. We'll be covering these things in details. So as the last point, you guys can go ahead and go through. It clearly says that it has got a hardware limit. Try and understand that whenever you try to go ahead and vertically scale, you'll always end up with some kind of limitation. Like even if we take the example of the best architecture which Amazon has to provide us today, that is somewhere around 256 GBs of RAM and I'm just quoting. I'm not quoting the right thing because I haven't gone through the latest, which is the Extreme series, what they're offering. But yeah, there are like at maximum you'll go for 256 GBs of RAM and 912 or more than that kind of uh, core units in terms of processing. So these are the things which we'll be just going ahead and locking ourselves. So vertical scalability is always done on a smaller platform, wherein you know that the end users or the target audience would not accrue to a given point. When you know there is a certain kind of limitation, when you know your own limitations, that okay, I'll be not getting more than this particular traffic, then only you just go ahead and use this particular mechanism in terms of solution architecture. I'll also go ahead and illustrate it with an example. Now I'm coming down to horizontal scalability. Horizontal scalability means you increase the number of instances, system of your application. Now what happens is, imagine another situation in which you are running a T2 micro and you are offering the end user that, okay, now you were able to go ahead and serve say about 20 people and you have a bulk of 100 people. So you'll start 5 more servers or T2 micro instances or T2 nano instances or T2 large instances. So any instance, if you just go ahead and multiply it with the number of times so that the bulk is horizontally distributed within the systems, it's known as horizontal scalability. Now in Azure, you have different kind of fancy names for this. In AWS, we have different time. In Alibaba, but you have to first understand the basic concept. What is horizontal scalability and what is vertical scalability? So this is one of the most important slides which you have to go ahead and keep in mind. Someone would go ahead and say it's scale in, scale out. scale up, scale down. So these are the terms which will be used in AWS. Some other technology might be using some other terms. So you never need to worry about them, but you need to know what is the basic fundamental, how it operates and what it works on. Horizontal scaling implies distributed system. Distributed system is nothing but, how to go ahead and, multiply, or how to just go ahead and, pass on the uh, the load onto the multiple systems. Uh, this is more into practice because you don't have any kind of limitations. You can run, say, about 10 odd servers or 15 odd servers, or if required, you can even run 10,000 servers. So, and this can be always calculated. This can always be modulated and moderated. By this, I mean that when you find that the bulk is going high, so you can always go ahead and spin up some more servers. You can always go ahead and, uh, you know, uh, do explicit number of spinning up of servers and so on. I'll be coming up with an example. Let's go to the first slide. So in this slide, you can see that, you hire a guy, a very fresher, and he's able to write, say, about, 10 line of codes in, say, about, 15 minutes. Or let's take some other example. Take an example of a call center wherein you have hired a new guy and he can pick up 10 calls, say, about in 10 minutes. Now the bulk increases. You see that, in the evening, you are getting a call volume of, say, about 50 calls per minute. So what you are gonna do, not 50, but 20 odd calls per minute. So you are gonna increase the potential of that particular guy. Either go ahead and groom him, or go ahead and, teach him to go ahead and, maintain a higher AST, or you just go ahead and hire a new resource who is a senior resource, and you can pick up, say, about 10 calls per 10 minutes, or 20 calls per 10 minutes, sorry, 20 calls per 10 minutes. So in this fashion, you have increased the potential of an individual person in terms of capacity. Like, if you are able to write 10 line of LOC for within 1 minute, the other seasoned person, or the person who has been working on coding part for a long time, he can just go ahead and write uh, 50 LOC line of codes within, say, about 1 minute. So this is the difference. But at a time, it would come that you cannot pick up 100 calls at a time. Same guy. There would be call waiting. So this is not a very good option to go ahead and always go ahead and vertically scale. So we use horizontal scaling. Horizontal scaling means you are hiring fresher or seasoned person, but you are increasing the number of people. So if you are getting 10 calls in a minute, you are distributing it to one guy, then he can go ahead and ideally pick up those calls and answer in, say, about 2 seconds or 3 seconds or 10 seconds. But if you're getting 50 calls per minute, you'll distribute it under, say, about 6 or 10 people. Then everyone gets a call and everyone gets an answer. So you don't have call waiting. Similarly, if you're trying to go ahead and creating a database, for instance, wherein Aadhaar or some huge number of replications needs to be taken place, or a high volume of data entry comes into picture. So if you just enroll one server, that won't be able to go ahead and capacitate it, say, about at a very frequent basis. When the input is very high, you need to horizontally scale it. So if you spin, say, about 6 odd servers and distribute it equally, or by various mechanisms which we are going to study today, that can go ahead and encompass all the data at a given point at higher availability. So what is high availability? High availability is a term which is generally used for databases. You guys work enormously on database, so you must be aware of this particular term. But I'll just go ahead and quickly cover this. High availability is like you need to run the application in two different data centers. In terms of AWS, we call it availability zone. So high availability usually goes hand in hand with horizontal scaling because, for example, if your call center was first in New York and the other was in San Francisco, so what happens is if the entire call center gets some kind of, you know, uh, if uh, Vodafone is down and it was providing you service for incoming calls for New York site, and you have T-Mobile in San Francisco. So what happens is if New York site is down, so there is another site which can just go ahead and take the bulk. But if you don't have it in terms of geo redundancy, that you have it in that same floor or same building or same area like New York, what will happen is the entire call volume, depending on one particular service provider, that will go for a toss, which no one wants. So the goal is to go ahead and have high availability across data center loss. So if there is a particular data center and you have just enrolled into it for all kind of servings as well as storage and everything, and if that fails, your entire availability fails. So that's why we go ahead and try to replicate that same model into another data center, so that we call it high availability. So the high availability can be passive, and we will be covering these things in details in the upcoming slide. So let's move on to the other slide. So high availability versus scalability for EC2. These both terms are very synonymous, what you can say, and it would be like very confusing, but they are different in several aspects. So vertical scaling increase the number of instances. Scale up or scale down. As I told you that these are the terms which you'll be using. Scale up for vertical. If you want to go ahead and increase the instance size, for example, this is the right slide wherein we can think of. You have 12.3 terabytes of RAM and 448 virtual cores for CPU. So you can imagine the capacity in which you can move on. So today we have this particular agility to go and migrate the same instance and make it. It's just like we have seen Ramayana where in Hanumanji used to just go ahead and increase his size, and whenever it's not required, then he used to just go ahead and even reduce his size from a very large person or a giant to a very nimble kind of a small, tiny, and he can pass through tiny holes. So you can just always remember this from the example which I have given you. You'll never forget. I am pretty sure all of us have, uh, watched this particular series. Apart from that, horizontal scaling is just like increasing the number in or out. So either you scale in or you scale out. Scale in means you are coming back. Scale out means you are increasing the number of instances. There are auto scaling groups. There are load balancers which are into place. So we are talking about load balancers now. High availability is running an instance into running an application on instance across multiple AZs. AZs again is for availability zones. So we have auto scaling groups and we have load balancers for multiple AZs as well. So in totality, if you talk about any kind of solution designing, this is a very important aspect wherein you need to go ahead and focus. And it would be good that if you just remember or just remember the scale in, scale up, scale out, these kind of terms, because that would be very, very rapidly used. So first, let me think of, what do you understand by load balance? What is load and what is balancer? So can anyone explain? Would you like to take a try? You guys are there?
In general term, like as per my understanding, load balancer means uh, let's suppose if there are two instances and the same number of jobs are running on both, so the things are balanced. I'm not sure if I'm correct.
Okay, no problem. I'll explain it in details. So load balancing, what is load? This is the first term, and what is balancing? This is what I would suggest you to go and understand. So load is bulk. A server has got a capacity. An application has got no capacity. An application can just go. I'm sorry to use this particular term, but I think I was wrongly quoting this particular thing. But application can have a capacity. So in simple terms, you have made an application, for example, of serving 10 cars, just like an Uber. Now, if you get 100 cars request, like, 100 cars, drivers are roaming around and you need to deploy every client onto these cars. So your application would just go ahead and crash. Reason behind your number of requests which you are getting on the server is much more higher as compared to the number of outputs which you can go ahead and provide, because you have limitation in terms of the processing capability, or you must have or you may have a disturbance in terms of computing it or storing it in the RAM or caching it. There can be multiple things. So what happens is we go ahead and divide or distribute this particular load up onto multiple instances or multiple servers. So like one server is capable of, sorry, I have a bad throat today. So if one server is capable of going ahead and handling, say, about 100 clients, and if you give them 1,000 clients, we have to enroll 9 more servers, because that would equally distribute it 100 among all those 10 EC2 instances. For example, I'm just using EC2 instances as of now, but you can have a load balancer for enormous amount of things. You can have a dedicated procedure in which you can just go ahead and store data among various data sets across various instances. So load balancing is one of the core concepts of solution designing, and you should emphasize onto this. So in this particular diagram, as it's clearly illustrated, you have 3 users, and you can see that in between there's a load balancer. So the user 1 goes to the load balancer first, and then it moves on to the EC2 first instance. User 2 goes to the second instance, and user 3 goes to the third instance. Now you have to also understand in this particular slide, which I'll just go ahead and edit after this particular presentation, is that it even saves your internal configuration. Load balancers, if you provide a DNS or if you provide a IP, earlier what used to happen was you have to direct expose your EC2 instance. But right now you have a security mechanism coming into picture, wherein you can just go ahead and have a load balancer facing all the bulk. So it even gives you the security that your application would never be able to be reached by any Trojan or any kind of virus or anything. Reason behind, it always gets truncated or terminated at the load balancer itself. And after that, you can internally have a very secure mechanism of private IPs or internal transfer protocols, wherein it would be very, very secure. Why we use load balancers, most of the things I've already explained, but you can just go through on a skimmed note onto this particular slide. Spread load across multiple downstream instances. Expose a single point of DNS to your application. So this is from the perspective of security. Seamlessly handle failures and downstream. So for example, if you are one of your instance, I'll go back to the previous slide. If one of the instances down and you were targeting all your bulk on that particular instance. So in this case, if this particular instance is down, so immediately the bulk can be transferred to another these two. But if you were directly in, user was talking to this particular instance, so it's just like elastic IP, also the same concept is used over here. So if this is down, we can migrate it to the second one. If this is also down, we can replace or recreate more instances like this, and load balancer would be the front facing, doing the heavy lifting, and that would easily go ahead and migrate those things from, getting a disaster that, your server is not reachable. So it also provides SSL termination, which we'll be discussing in details in the upcoming slides, as well as I'll try to go ahead and, give you the concept of, how the SSL gets terminated onto the front, onto the load balancer part. Enforce stickiness with cookies. This is again something which I'll be explaining later on. High availability across zones. This has already been explained, and separate public traffic from private traffic. So private and public I've already explained in the first or second class, wherein it's an internal network which is private. So you always do not expose your internal configurations to anything what is outside. So this is a very important concept in terms of security. So why use EC2 load balancers? Again, we'll be covering this in hands-on session right now. Just say about, in 5 more minutes, we'll be going to our real time, how to go ahead and, switch on, switch off load balancers, how to go ahead and, deploy, or how to go ahead and, do the balancing basis application, basis networking, basis, URLs, basis the bulk which you get, or even basis the triggers of alarm onto the CloudWatch. CloudWatch, we'll be talking about that in a different section. So now this is something to do with the cost. It costs less to set up the load balancers, but it will be a lot more efforts on your end. Earlier, what used to happen was when the software development team used to go ahead and sit, these things were done on a application layer that the balancing and distribution, or it was supposed to be done by the NetOps and so on. So you need to hire, say, about 3 odd guys, a system administrator who will just go ahead and see, have a quick check that whether all the instances are up and running, all the hardware components are up and running. There's no network timeout. Your ISP, if he fails over, then your entire server is gone for a toss. So these kinds of hazards has been taken over by SaaS as a service, as a platform, wherein these services are what is being sold at AWS or Azure or the Alibabas of the globe today. So it's integrated with AWS offering as a service. So this is one of the core important point which I would like to go ahead and reiterate, that today we have the agility to go ahead and do these things on a click of a button. Earlier, we have to invest, say, about several lines and huge amount of code, and that's what on the first day I was talking about, that you have 2 different computers in a cluster, and all those servers would be connected to these things, and you have to maintain the heartbeat, and you have to just go ahead and have the same blend of operating system, exactly the same kind of configuration in terms of your hardware. Then only you can do the balancers, load balancing and NLBs and so on. But right now it's given as a service. So it's not that you cannot do it at your virtual machines. You can create your own virtual machines at a virtual environment on your desktop or on your computers, and you can do the same balancing by programmatically or by different means. But these things are given as a service by AWS. And the best part is load balancers are more or less free. So this is the best part, and it's been managed by AWS. The things which have been consumed under your load balancing, you are being charged for them. What are health checks? Health checks are a kind of check which is continuously been done onto your EC2 instances, whether they are up and running, whether they are not getting huge amount of load, whether they are not crashing, and so on and on. So there are health checks which are very critical, and this is an internal intrinsic part of your load balancers, that it automatically goes to every EC2 instance and asks them that, okay, are you okay? And if you get a response of 200, that means your instance is unhealthy. Sorry, if you get a response, it's not 200, okay, then your instance is unhealthy. So in simple, it's a common practice whether if you have a team of footballers and you're out there and you just go and keep on asking back that okay, if the goalkeeper is okay, then because if the goalkeeper is down or if he's having a stomachache, then immediately you have chances that that the goal would happen onto the by the opposite team. So it's just like that there is a captain who keeps on talking to every player of the team and keeps on having a crucial check that okay, everything is okay, no one is injured and so on, because if that's a permeable thing, then that particular thing can be breached. So health checks are nothing but they are continuously pinging at a certain interval of time that okay, the EC2 instances are working fine or not. Types of load balancers which AWS offers us are three kinds primarily. One is the classic load balancer, which is older generation. Not much of the questions would revolve around this, but yeah, sometimes you get questions in your examination basis, classic load balancing as well. The kind of termination or the kind of protocols which you can go ahead and use is HTTP, HTTPS, and TCP. Then you have application load balancers, which is version 2. And this is new generation, started in 2016. And there is network load balancing, which is coming up into, it came up in 2017, and that works on TCP, TLS, and UDP. And application load balancer works on HTTP, HTTPS, and WebSockets. Overall, it's recommended that you use the newer versions and try not to use the classic version. The classic version, again, it's free, and there are you can have an internal setup and an external setup of elastic load balancing. By this, what I mean is, if you have the elastic load balancing after DMZ, demilitarized zone, or before the fire, in simple, forget about DMZ. There is a firewall within every organization. So if you have your load balancing post that, which means at the configuration of your servers section, then you call it internal, which is within your private network. And if you have it on the external side, on the public side, where all the load falls into that particular load balancer, and then it starts communicating to the various instances, then you call it a public or external ELB. So up till here, do you have any doubts or do you have any confusion? Just let me know, because this is the theory part, but we'll be going ahead and doing our hands dirty with the lab section as well. So
Vijay, one question here. So can you please repeat that last statement, like where you are trying to explain internal or external load balancers?
So if you remember, Abhishek, we were working on the internal and external, the previous night that we were working on. If you have any kind of internal porting or internal communication within your servers and everything, so that's called private. And if you have load balancing being deployed over there, then it's called a private load balancer. And if you have it on the external facing, like, the entire traffic is coming up on the public node, and then that particular node distributes it under various systems or various servers, then you call it an external load balancer.
Okay, so it is like the previous slide which you have I mean, there were a couple of slides back where you gave that example, this one. So this is kind of external load balancing.
Absolutely. This is external.
Okay.
So you have security groups, which we'll again see in the lab, that these are again, you guys can correlate this particular screenshot where I have taken from, wherein we are doing the security group. If you remember that HTTP, it has got a protocol of TCP, and the port range is HTTPS is for 443. So everything is like, load balancer security group where we have created over here, and application security group allows traffic only for the load balancer. This is a very important concept wherein, see, this is the load balancer which is publicly facing all the HTTP and HTTPS requests from outside. Various kinds of users can go ahead and hit this particular thing. But you have to remember that you have a EC2 instance and it has got a dedicated IP or whatsoever mechanism you want to go ahead and communicate. So this internal communication should have a private IP, and you should just allow that particular private IP to go ahead and enter. So what is happening is, imagine a house wherein you have a main gate. So at the main gate, you have a security guard who is asking that, okay, there is a reception and all of you guys can go ahead and talk to the receptionist over this particular phone. So what will happen is, earlier, if the receptionist was there, all the people can come inside and talk to the receptionist. But right now you have a security guard outside the house and there's a phone call which you can make. So there is a kind of security which comes into picture, and there's only one line connecting to the internal, receptionist. And that is security from the security standpoint of view, that not all the users are talking, but the security guard picks up the call, dials in and say that, hey, this guy has come up. Should I let him in or should I let him out? So this is additional layer of security which it provides. Because earlier EC2 was handling everything. Right now, the load balancer is taking care of that particular thing. So by port, I mean that internal ports and external ports. So port would be always 80. You'll communicate in terms of protocol, in terms of HTTP. But the external communication is being layered by load balancer now. Good to know things are like, examination questions could be around that. What kind of client induced errors are there? So if you find anything with 4xx, 4xx means 404 or 424, or, there could be any kind of, error message which will pop up. So if you're troubleshooting and you find that, there are 5xx kind of errors that are induced by application, and if it's 404 or kind of thing, then it's been done by client. You can go through the further lines as well, that load balancer errors 503 means that the capacity or no registered target. Apart from that, the very important topic on the first bullet is LBs can scale out, but instantaneously. What I mean by this particular line is that when you have to deploy a very huge amount, like, if you have deployed, we'll be doing this in lab as well, that when you have a very huge bulk of things coming up or traffic coming up, and you spin a new load balancer immediately. So you have to contact AWS that, okay, please do the warm up first, because immediately it cannot take so much of bulk, say about 1 million hits per second or something like that. So not 1 million, it would be even much more higher. I'm just giving you a wild code that if you have a very huge amount of hits onto your NLB or ALB or any kind of load balancer, you need to just go ahead and contact AWS first that, okay, just do the warm up so that, we do not have any kind of, crashes or so on. Because might be that some of the configuration, or might be that the deployment of, say, about 100 EC2 instances in the same go, that would take some time, or some kind of security group. So, we'll be talking on to this particular section as well, that how you can just go ahead and, instantaneously provide solutioning to these kind of mechanisms in our lab. Then goes the monitoring, ELB access logs, that helps a lot. In any kind of server problems, we always go ahead and refer to the logs, wherein what and when it happened, and how things are piling up and so on. So CloudWatch again is a different course material altogether. We'll be covering CloudWatch in details in the upcoming sessions. Now we'll be first talking about classic load balancer, and after this particular slide, we are gonna do the hands-on. So it supports layer 4 and layer 7. Just keep in mind, do not go into the integrities, what is layer 4 and layer 7 as of now. You have to just remember that it works for HTTP and HTTPS. Health checks are TCP and HTTP based, and you always get a fixed host name. By this I mean that XXX region, then your ELB name, and then Amazon will go ahead and create the URL in this particular fashion. So enough of theory now. Let's go ahead and do some hand-holding sessions, and you guys can go ahead and practice at the same time. I'll be taking it over to Oprah now. Give me a quick moment.
Vijay?
Yeah.
Something has come up, so can we take a quick, 2-3 minutes break? If you don't mind. I mean, sorry for the trouble, but yeah.
Okay, sure. Let me pause the recording.
Sure, just 2-3 minutes. Actually, some important mail has come, so I need to reply.
So, hope guys, you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. So, onto this section, you have load balancers, but you have to understand that you need to have a clear-cut concept of EC2s, which we have already covered. So there are no EC2s running. So why not we go ahead and launch a EC2? We have to indeed launch 3 of these kind of applications to go ahead and show some kind of load balancing and so on. I'm showing you first the load balancer in terms of classic one, which we were talking about, and then gradually we'll move on to the application and network load balancing. So you have to select a kind of Linux distribution, what you want. Number of instances, you can just go ahead and make it 3 over here, or you can just go ahead and gradually do it later on.
So sorry to interrupt, is there any charge involved just in case if I increase the number of instances?
No.
No? Okay. So I can make it to any number of instances. There would be some limitation depending upon the type we select.
There is a limitation. So there are some kind of free hours with it, which has been given to you for 12 months. So there are some limitations, but if you run a T2 micro or if you run a T2 nano for a very low amount of time, you won't be charged for that. So now, once you guys are already through this particular thing, you must be familiar of what other things are over here and so on. So remember we discussed about user data. If any one of you can elaborate what is user data.
Yeah, so here, I mean, we can, paste some kind of a script or that we need.
Very good. So we call it bootstrapping. So you can just go ahead and get the bootstrapping done onto this particular. Just this is my bad. I'm pausing this recording. Okay, yeah. So very rightly said, this is for bootstrapping, and we can just go ahead and type in some scripts over here. And now you guys can have a deeper dive and you can understand a lot of things. So over here, we have dedicated subnet. So these are the availability zones within Mumbai, wherein you can just go ahead and select one. So why I'm talking about this particular thing, because as I have discussed about high availability, so I'm gonna select South 1A for this particular thing. So we never used to go ahead and do it earlier. And as you can see that it has got 4,091 IP addresses available. So these are the IPs which comes in the form of elastic IPs when you go ahead and have a dedicated or kind of a public facing IPs whenever you have to go ahead and now shared, dedicated, and so on. So you must have played around this particular thing as well. We can even have a dedicated instance. But again, our thing for today's exercise can be done on shared, so we are not going ahead and changing anything onto that. But here, I'll just go ahead and type some kind of bash commands so that everything can be taken care of by that itself. So how we will go ahead and identify whether which server is throwing up the or taking up the load. So for that, you need to just go ahead and incorporate a mechanism in which you'll just go ahead and do the echo, which you guys have already done. Hello world from, or hey, welcome from the host name and the kind of IP which it's circulating, so that I can show you that what is the difference. So let's start. Yum. First thing is always you have to go ahead and update the entire server. And we do -y for just one simple reason is like it should not ask yes, 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 because there would be no one. These scripts run at the very first time of the installation of the server, wherein all the things would be automatically run and installed. So now I'm gonna install the web server. Or rather, I'll just try to go ahead and find it on Google, and I'll just go ahead and paste it. Or let me type. Okay, we'll be wasting time onto this, so let me find the right script and I'll just go ahead. Add storage. This look good. Add tag. Let's do it for NLB. It's not NLB. This is the first thing which we are doing. Classic. This is a very important section wherein what all things you are allowing. So SSH, of course, and let's give it HTTP as well. If you want, you can give, elsewise it's good to go. But it's a good practice to go ahead and give HTTP. So if you want to launch, things could look good. I'll just use a new key pair. So now your instance is up and running. It's in pending state right now. In the meanwhile, if I just copy and try to run, I should have a failure message, but let's just check. It's waiting because it's still pending instance. Yep, error. So let's see, yeah, now it's running, so it should be up and running too. So as you can see that this is hello world from a specific IP, and it gives you the South 1 compute. So this is giving me two things which are very important. First thing is like, what is the IP, and the second is the region from where it's been originated, as well as the availability zone details. So I'm now gonna do the load balancing. So go to the load balancing section and let's create our first load balancer. So over here you can see that there are three kind of load balancers, and the classic load balancer, it's a previous generation, so it's like grayed out. They don't want to go and encourage using the load balancer, but it's a basic of everything, because the first kind of load balancer they introduced was this, and after that it came up to the network load balancer and application load balancing. But we should know how the classic things work. So let's call it what you would like to call. Let's call it my.
Vijay, reason being, right now it is not used more as compared to application and network.
I'm sorry.
What I am saying, like reason being, why it is not used mostly like as comparison to application and network load balance.
We will discuss that in details, in this session itself. So this is the default VPC. It's simple, the kind of magnitude of operations can be done, or the kind of bulk which a network load balancer can take, the kind of throughputs or the kind of IP ranges or the number of requests which can be served by NLB or ALB, that cannot be done by the classic load balancer. So that's the only reason, why these folks are not encouraging it.
Okay.
So over here you can see that it's a create an internal load balancer, or it's a external. So if you click on internal, then we are gonna create internal. But if you click on external, then it would become an external load balancer. So we are not gonna do that. And now.
So with your one question here, I mean, like how we gonna decide like whether we are going for internal or external? Because my understanding is mostly, I think we should go for external only, right? That could give better security.
Good and tricky question, but to answer this, a lot of times you can be wrong in choosing internal routing or external routing. So it's completely dependent on the kind of tailoring which you want to make as a solution architect. Are you getting my point? So if the requirement of the client is that you have a heavy bulk, but if there are applications within your own ecosystem which is consuming a lot of your bandwidth for internal compute, like for example, again I'll take that same example of Aadhaar, wherein the internal compute, you have got a request from outside. Are you getting my point? You got a request from outside that, okay, hey, this is my query. The query is, let's go ahead and create some tricky query. The query is, you need to find all the females above the age of 35, divorced, single mother, and so on. So this is a kind of a, sorry to be sexist and using just for females. You can just go ahead and omit it and do male. So all those males who are above 35 and using this particular mechanism to go ahead and find their single parent, and they live in Delhi NCR and Chennai. So you have to drill the entire database of India for that. Now, internal load balancing, why I'm talking about, because your internal components would go ahead and consume a lot of bandwidth. Are you getting my point? So how you will do the distribution of load, which is coming in from internally. From external, of course, you have like 1 million people coming in for various kind of queries. So you gave a kind of a load balancing outside, but internal also you can have a huge amount of loads. So how you'll balance that particular load? Or if you're working on a ticketing system, you guys have ever worked on a ticketing system wherein you get the request, You get the number of requests, you ingest it within your ecosystem, and after that you have raised a ticket. So who is going to do the balancing in terms of your ticketing? So we will be discussing that again offline. I'll go ahead and give you insights on that. So now we are about to go ahead and assign a security group. So let's create another security group. My first SG, and in this particular section, we'll be just going ahead and playing around with TCP. So all the requests which are coming in the form of TCP over port number 80, and the source over here is from infinity, means 0.0 is like, you can just go ahead and get it from anywhere. Health check, that gives you, now it's not necessary that you will have index.html. So / always gives you the liberty to go ahead and execute. Now this is an important part wherein you have your response time. So your response time is just about configuring the health check. So at how much interval you want to do this? So let's go ahead and reduce it to 10. Unhealthy threshold is like 2 times. If you find this particular thing it goes unhealthy, and if you have healthy, then it 10 times. So more or less looks good till here. Now here comes, I'll just go ahead and use this particular EC2 instances. Let's, okay, 300 millisecond will be, just remember this particular term, cross zone load balancing. We'll be covering it in details in today's session itself. And enable connection with 300 seconds. Okay, it also looks good. Key pair, you can just classic LP. So let's just go ahead and quickly review it. It looks good. Let's create our first load balancer. Okay, bingo. So we are done. So now this is my first classic load balancer, and this particular DNS should be working by now. Okay. So let's check, and then, okay, it's giving me an error. Why it's giving me an error? That's an important question. And I think my instance is not running as of now. Let's see the health check and instant state. Instant state is out of service. Why it's out of service? Because we have given 10 seconds to go ahead and have a health check. So 10 seconds are not over. Let's wait and watch for this particular thing. And this is in 1A, availability zone. In the meanwhile, I'll just go ahead and maneuver with the health check. Yes, it's 10 seconds. Now I think it should be out of, okay, it's still out of, it's taking some sweet time. Let's refresh it. Now it's in service. And by here, 1 of 1 instance, okay. So now ideally it should work. Okay. They are not happy. So let's try one more time. Still throwing error. Why it's throwing error is because of the security group. Now let me just go ahead and have a quick check.
Vijay, in security group, we were given only TCP. There was no HTTPS. So that might be the reason.
Yep, that's the reason. No, HTTP is there. Added TCP 80, TCP 80. Save it. So it's working now. So that was my bad. I forgot to go ahead and do that. So hello world from this particular IP. Now what we are going to do next is, let's just go ahead and create some more EC2 instances of similar type. And then what will happen is we'll distribute it in other regions of our particular launch more like this. This is an important feature. So everything, right? Let me just go ahead and check whether it's copying the, okay, yeah, it's copying the user data as well. What we have to change over here is, let's change it to 1B so that, you know, you guys can see it. It would be evident that the load balancing is, you know, up and working. Review and launch, things looks good. 80, 80, 20, 20.
So in this case, like if first will be shut down, so it will be replicated to the second one.
We are not shutting it down. I'll just go ahead and come down to that. Because, you know, while talking, a lot of times what happens is, you know, we miss on some integral details, and then that particular thing doesn't work. So I'll just go ahead and explain you in detail. Just give me one quick, let me run one more. So let's select this one. Or let it complete or launch one more instance. So 2 instances are running. Now let's replicate this one. And this time we'll do it in the 3rd region. So let's go back here. And everything looks good. Review and launch. With that same key pair, we shall launch it. Okay, so this is another thing for the examination, that a lot of times, you know, not all the availability zones are available. So even if I retry this, it's not going to work. So again, we'll be placing this particular thing in the other availability zone. Let's keep it in 1B itself. And this time it should allow. And here we go, bingo. So now our 3 of the instances are running. If you just go ahead and give it a name. So EC2 1A, because this A1. Let's give it B2. B1. And let's give this one B2. Because these were in the same region. Now what we are going to do is, all of the instances are running. Let's go back to our load balancer and ingest these within our instances, because the load balancer is already created. You can do it vice versa, that you can create 3 instances first itself and then either, you know, add all these 3 at the same time. But I wanted to show you what is the difference which we are going to do. So we'll be just adding up all of these 3. And let's click on save. Now, as you can see, these are out of service because it has got a TTL. So let's wait for 10 seconds. And you can see that 3 of the 3 instances are in service. Wow, this was pretty fast. Very fast. Okay, I'm happy. Now, folks, I believe if the demo god is happy with us, it should change the IP, because that would be coming in from different IP. Now you can see it has changed to South 1. So what happens is it's distributing its stress onto these three instances now: A1, B1, B2, and these are available in A1, and these are available in South 1B. So these are three different regions. All of them are in service, and now we have a load. So for example, this is a very simple thing. So this is working as of now, but we should not be opening up this particular port now. I'll just go ahead and show you something. So this time again, you see that it's changing. From 2, it becomes 1, and the IP changes. Why it's changing? Because it's routing to the different EC2 instances. You see the IP changes as soon as I go ahead and click on this particular button. Reason behind is, in terms of architecture, you have 3 EC2 instances up and running, which are over here. You have a network load balancing who is facing the the front line, and you have do the high availability as well, because you have created instances in different in different availability zones within the same region, and you have created health check, and you are listening. So your listeners are from TCP on port number 80, and you are distributing it under various instances, the 3 instances which are present over here. So this is the load balancing mechanism, which I tried to go ahead and explain in detail. That once the load comes to any of the NLB, so that particular load balancer would distribute it either to this one, to this one, or to this one. If any of the services are down, so if you are getting a bulk on this one, like the third server, so immediately it would route it on to these two. If these two are engaged, then it would route it on the third one. So this particular decision is being made by AWS. Earlier, we used to go ahead and manually, do it, or script. We used to go ahead and do it by script, or we used to go ahead and do a lot of other efforts to go ahead and get it done. So in simple, this life has been simplified by load balancers. So this is one of the load balancers which we were seeing. The other kind of load balancer is the network, and I hope I'm clear up till this particular extent.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, great. So now let's just keep it till here in terms of our lab. We'll be going back to the deck again. So this was illustration of the classic load balancer. Now we are gonna move ahead to network and application. And let me see if I'm recording. Oh yes, I'm recording. So this is application load balancing. So all your queries would be resolved on this particular slide, wherein why we use application, or why we use, so we'll be going through a lot of use cases as well. So what happens is, first thing is what are the mechanisms that support? So it supports HTTP, both the types like HTTPS and HTTP, and it even supports WebSockets. Applications which are built over the machine. So you can just go ahead and create an environment wherein the self-replication of machines can trigger, or wherein a particular task can be done immediately by replication of a server. So we call it containers. So there's a whole lot of session over containers itself. The load balancing part of this is being bifurcated on the same machine in the form of containers. Are you aware of the term containers?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So, and are you aware of the terms WebSocket?
Myself, no.
Okay, no problem. I'll just go ahead and elaborate it. So WebSocket. So what happens is the ideal way of communication between HTTP and other protocols was that you go ahead and create a request. The request gets submitted to the host. The client generates the request and it goes to the host or the server. The server processes that and your connection breaks and it gives you a reply and again the connection breaks. So there's not an instantaneous mechanism, one request per client, and that particular session immediately gets truncated after that. It gets terminated. Now, what happens is in today's world, if you just take an example of a chatting window. Like you have various chatting windows, or you even the current thing which we are working on wouldn't be possible if we don't have WebSockets. So there's a very tiny difference between not a tiny difference, it's a huge difference. I'm sorry. So WebSockets, what they go ahead and do is they go ahead and create a session. Like if you're chatting with someone and you said hi, and after that, if the connection breaks, you're gonna lose him. So what happens is it creates a kind of a tunnel between the client and the server till the time either of them says goodbye, in simple terms. So there is a dedicated channel from which you will intra-communicate, because if you're chatting, then you don't know whether you'll be chatting for 1 hour or 1 minute or 10 minutes. So, or even take the example of gaming. Like when you play game, you create a session, because you cannot just run to say about one screen to another and then your session gets lost and then you have to restart the game. So these are the basic example of WebSockets, wherein requests are done to the servers and there's a persistent connection between the server and the client, and that continues for a longer period of time until unless either of them says like, okay, we are good to go, and let's disconnect. So this is a unique feature, and this is only been done by application load balancers, which is version 2, and that is almost like the highest. The frequency of request is also increased in the application ALB. So this is one of the important things. Now, the routing mechanism itself can be targeted, for the target groups. Like what I mean is, if you are running a very big site like Microsoft does, and you have users and you have posts and you have news and so on. So like you can dedicate servers or target groups for posts. You can dedicate users as for a certain EC2 instance. You can dedicate some macro websites or micro websites for a particular server, that okay, these many requests should go to this particular user target groups, or this particular thing should only go to this particular folder, sorry, not folder, to this particular server. You can also go ahead and do it in the form of URIs or query strings or headers. So this is what has been mentioned on this particular slide, that you can bifurcate the kind of requests which are coming in. So for example, if you're just opening up Microsoft.com, it would go to the different server. If you're opening up Microsoft.com/user, then it would go to a different server. If you're again doing it /post, then it would go to a different server. Or if you have one.microsoft.com, or if you have hotmail.com, then it would go to a different set of servers altogether. So this is what I mean to explain over here. So it even helps you in microservices and container-based applications like Docker, and we'll be covering ECS in greater deep dive in the upcoming sessions. So ALB helps you in microservices and container-based services. And if you want to go ahead and automatically spin up some kind of Docker at a kind of request, so it even helps you going ahead and doing that. Port mapping is also, this is too complex for you as of now. So port mapping features are also being, done on ECS, as well as ALB has got the feature to go ahead and do that. And in we need to have multiple classic load balancers per application, So in simple terms, in comparison of classic load balancers, which is the older version, we have much more bandwidth for bifurcation of the kind of request which we get and then route it to the target groups which we have, created. We'll be doing the hands-on on this as well. I'll be showing you how to go ahead and create this, but you guys have to go ahead and do it as a part of homework. And so this particular example would just go ahead and illustrate it in a very easy manner. So right now what we did was we created EC2 instances, and the request which used to go ahead and come was directly been truncated to the 3 instances, if you remember in the lab. But now what's happening is that all the requests which are coming to the Elastic Load Balancer, which is the application load balancer, and it goes to the target group. Now this target group could be for users, as I mentioned in the previous slide. It can be for search. This target group can be for a different website altogether. So basis the kind of request which is coming up over here, like if you want to use Facebook as an example, so let's use Facebook. So if Facebook request is coming onto this, what kind of request is coming? So this is being analyzed by application load balancer. Now, if Facebook /feeds, so it would go to the feeds target group. If Facebook /timeline comes as a request, as a part of a URL, then it would go to the target timeline, set of servers. If it's something like a particular profile /profile, then it would go to the profile section of the target group. If it's something to do with friend list, then the friend list target group would be there, and it would be migrated onto the friend list target group. So this is how the balancing is being done on. So you have to go ahead and put in some kind of restrictions that, okay, if this is this validation in the form of either URLs or by the kind of bulk which you're getting. So basis the kind of solution designing which you have to propose to the end client. So you can consume either of these kind of load balancers, be it application or be it network. So moving forward, what are the application load balancers? What are the auto scaling group? Will be covering this soon.
So Vijay, here target groups users will be like multiple EC2 instance which we had in classic load balancer, or it is something different over here in application load balancer?
In application load balancer, you will have a target group altogether.
Here I am confused, but okay, you can go ahead and say this later on.
Sure.
Because
now ECS tasks are, ECS itself manages it. So Lambda functions will be covering, this is the core function wherein, or the core concept for serverless compute within AWS. And you must have a private IP for, application load balancing. This is but obvious because I've already given you the concept of private IPs. You have to have a dedicated, private IP to go ahead and, get it enrolled, get it engaged. Can route multiple target groups. Health checks can be done on a target. So moving on to the easy thing. Now you get a fixed host name. This is again common, like, you know, in the previous thing as well, we used to go ahead and get a fixed host name. True IP, client forwarding. This is important because, you know, this is from the examination perspective. What happens is the connection gets terminated. So for example, there could be two kind of requests coming in for any kind of website. It could be HTTPS, it could be HTTP. Now the internal communication is done over the private IP. Let me just go ahead and take this slide back onto one of the EC2 instances so that I can make you understand. So let's go up. Let's select. Let's enlarge it. So as you can see over here, that there is no elastic IP and there is one public IP, which is this. So this site can be accessed either from the DNS or from the public. So I'll just show you that, you know, I copied this one and let's run it on a new window. So this is working. Now I'm gonna copy the public IP and it should be working too. So this is working too. Now what is this private IP for? This private IP is for the internal communication of AWS, its own, you know, systems. Are you getting my point? So this is a must have when it comes down, if you go ahead and create a load balancer. Let's just go ahead and get down to the lab. This would help us a lot. So create a load balancer. Now we are coming down to the application load balancer. So as you can see that you have several things over here. So let's call it and this would be internet facing or it could be internal as I've shown you. Now it gives you dual stack. So these again are coming up as a new. So you are not aware of the concept of virtual cards. So I'll just go ahead and illustrate in some other class and then I'll explain this particular thing. Now over here you can see the availability zones wherein you can select South A, 1A, 1B, 1C and so on. We are not gonna do that bit. Global accelerator, this is something else. If you get down to these things, you'll be confused. I don't want you guys to be confused as of now. Now load balancer protocols would be HTTP on port number 80. If you want to add HTTPS, but we do not have the certificates as of now, it would unnecessarily create an hassle. So let's just remove it. Moving up for security group, either you can create or you can have others as well. Now this is very important, wherein you have to understand what and how the target groups work. So you are creating a new target group. Let's make it like target. What name should we give? Feed. Now this can be instance based or this can be IP based, or you can even write a Lambda function for this. if we have IP, we can go for instance because we have created 3 instances and we haven't enrolled private IPs, public IPs for these 3. I mean elastic IPs. Let's go to the advanced section. Traffic port override. These are again like, the health check. Let's make it higher. Timeout. Interval of 30 seconds. Let's make it 10 because it would again take more time. We are going to register all these 3. Now, see, these are the UI changes which AWS does on a random basis. Earlier, we just used to go ahead and click on this particular button and click on review and we used to go forward. But I think by clicking on this, it would, okay, see, it's taking it up over here now. So I don't know why they did this, but yeah, this is more like, instant registration and so on. But the same thing can be done in OneGo itself. Okay, let's now review it. Application load balancing, internet facing, HTTP, accelerator is disabled. And let's create it. Okay, successfully created. Now let's go back. So classic load balancer is almost done. We'll be going ahead on the first ALB. And let's see, it should fail ideally. The ARM. Sorry, the DNS. Because we haven't put any kind of policies to the target groups. Yep, it failed. So now what we are going to do is we have to configure the target groups. Now target feed, this is the one we have to select. Okay, if I'll do everything, then what you guys will do. So I'll give this for homework and I'll just show you where you have to go and make the changes. Till now you have covered it. You have to put in the conditions post this. 1 second. Okay, I'm so sorry. It's still provisioning. So it would take some time to go to provision. And by the way, one thing which is not been covered in any of the slides is like they have given a new service altogether, which is migration. So you can launch the NLB directly from here as well. So we created a classic load balancer in our previous session. No, this particular session. And we can directly migrate it to NLB. We haven't covered NLB, so I think we'll be requiring more time for covering up the high availability elasticity part. Even you can see that you can migrate now from classic load balancer to the next generation load balancer. So it generally takes you to here. This is an important feed wherein you can go ahead and know the differences, what you have been asking and so on. So I'll just go ahead and give this particular URL onto the WhatsApp group which we have, so that you guys can read what is the difference. There are lots and lots of things like zonal failovers, as well as stickiness. So stickiness is something which we'll be covering. Stickiness is nothing but it's just like you stick to a particular EC2 instance. So you have capabilities onto our load balancing in which we can just go ahead and have the stickiness. So you can just go through and maneuver these kind of tutorials. I'll just do it. And It's still provisioning. So this is very strange. It's taking huge amount of time. Okay, now it's active. So guys, we don't have much time left. It's already 10:30. So what I'm gonna do is I'm stopping the recording now.